So this is actually the purpose of our meeting today, this afternoon in this mosque. And it is a similarity, we should be proud of it, that we have gathered here to greet Ramadan al-Mubarak, just as the Prophet ﷺ gathered his companions on the last day of Shaban. I am reciting again, An Salman al-Farsi radiyallahu anhu, قال خطبنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في آخر يوم من شعبان فقال يا أيها الناس فقد أضلكم شهر عظيم شهر مبارك شهر فيه ليلة خير من ألف شهر جعل الله صيامه فريضة وقيام ليله تطوعا. It's a long hadith, but I am only reciting this part of it. Now, let us begin our discussion about Saum and Ramadan and the dual program that it has for us. First of all, what is Saum or Siyam? What's the literal meaning of this word? What's the basic sense in which the Arabs used this word before Quran was sent down? Because all the terminology that Quran has adopted, the basic words are from the Arabic language. They were in use before Quran was revealed. Then Quran, or for that matter we should say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He picked and chose the words from the Arabic language, adopted them, and made them the terms of Islam and Iman. So what was the word Saum? What does it mean? Literally, what is the literal meaning of Saum? Saum actually means only to abstain from, refrain from eating and drinking. That's all. To abstain or refrain from eating and drinking, this is Saum. But this Saum as a mode of worship that was not known to Arabs before the advent of Islam. The pagan Arabs, people who said that they were the progeny of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam and Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam, Quraysh, there was no sense of Saum with them. They had Hajj, they knew Salah, although they had changed, the Salah to a great extent, but they knew the word Salah. It means prayer, to pray to God, to pray to their idols, to pray to the other, deities. So there was Salah, there was Zakah, Sadaqat. These words were known to them. Then used in the same way Hajj, Umrah, Tawaf, all these things. They knew these terms because they were doing it. Although they had changed so many things and added so many bid'at to it. But the basic terminology was there. But the Saum, it was not at all present in their tradition. On the contrary, they used this word for their horses only, to prepare them to be able to bear the hardships of war and fighting. Because the animal that they had for their riding and their communications, basically camel. And the camel was suited to their environment. It could go without water for a week or 10 days even. It didn't need water. It could store water for 7 days or even for 10 days. It had a very long neck. It could have its food from the trees. Even if there was no grass on the sand, if there is some tree, then it could have, its diet from there, its food from there. It could walk on the sand, because the feet were very broad. It could bear the heat of the sun. But horse, which they had to use, especially in their wars, in their fightings, when they had to attack, in the form of a guerrilla attack, they had to go swiftly. And then they had to retreat swiftly. So they needed horse for their wars. But this horse doesn't have that faculty of bearing these hardships of thirst and hunger. So they used to train them so that they were keeping them in Saum, not giving them food, not giving them water, so that they should be able to bear the hardships of hunger and thirst. Then they used to take a horse and facing the hot winds of the Arabian desert, the Bedouin would take the horse and the face will be turned towards the direction of the wind, so that it has to bear the wind, the burning wind of the Arabian desert. He himself used to cover his head with cloth. But you know, the horse, there was no clothing on the head of the horse. It had to bear the hardships of the heat, so that it is trained, so that during the days when they are going to war, this horse of theirs, it can sustain and bear all the hardships. So this was the word used by Quran for this particular mode of worship that was introduced to the Muslims only in Medina after Hijrah. You will not find the mention of Psalm or Siyam in the whole of the Makki Quran. You must be knowing that 2/3 of the Quran is Makki. That is the Makki surahs. They go to make 2/3 of the Quran. There's no mention of Psalm whatsoever. There's no mention of Psalm during the 13-year stay of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam at Makkah. It was only when he migrated to Medina, then you know these ayat, they were revealed, and then gradually the Arabs, which were not familiar with this mode of worship, they were familiarized. Gradually, I will tell you later on. It was not that a sudden command came, but just as we have in case of the other commandments of the Sharia, the do's and don'ts of the Sharia, that the people were gradually made accustomed to those things. Not a sudden imposition of some sudden law, but you know, the ground was first prepared. People were made ready to accept these commandments. And then only those final orders and final, you know, injunctions, they were revealed. So in the same way, this happened, you know, with the Psalm also. But now, because, you know, there is a likeliness, as I told you, that the horses, they used to keep Psalm in the Arabic tradition. The likeliness of this is that in the Quran we find, in Surah Al-Baqarah, just before the ayat which are giving the commandment of going to war for the cause of Allah, these ayat were revealed which were describing this psalm which we have just read, and I have just recited to you. Because in the 24th section of this surah you will find قَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ. So the same sequence is there. Before the Muslims were to enter that phase of their revolutionary struggle, in which they had to go to war. During 13 years of Makkah, no war. Rather, the Muslims were ordered to bear all hardships and not to retaliate whatsoever. No revenge, no retaliation, nothing of the sort. Take it, bear it, stand fast, have perseverance, show patience, no retaliation whatsoever. But after Hijrah, now the revolutionary struggle of the Prophet ﷺ entered the final phase. And what that was to challenge the system of the false system. And now, after throwing that challenge to the false system, there was going to come the era of war, the final armed conflict. So to prepare the Muslims for those hardships of war, now this ibadah, this mode of worship of Psalm has been prescribed for them. So the same background is present here also, which was there in the Arabic tradition, that they used to train their horses for going to battle, for wars, by Psalm. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed a special mode of worship for all the Muslims to keep prepared for any eventuality, for the cause of Allah, for the cause of the deen of Allah, so that you are trained to sustain all those hardships and bear all those difficulties which you will be required to bear for the cause of Allah.